English translation, 41st contact. Wednesday, 31st December, 1975, 0240 HRS.
I am really very pleased that I see you again.
It is the same with me, but my work limits this joy for a longer time because I am too busy.
Of course, you have spoken of it on several occasions. Now that the contacts are a bit sparse, I have made a list of questions in order to put together the most important.
That is good, so what do you have to ask?
The first question concerns your offspring. How do you do that if you want offspring?
That is a very unusual question.
It is not mine.
Sure, it would have surprised me too, because you know that material life forms...
Reproduce in the same manner and wise.
Sure, so why are you asking anyway?
I do not want the question answered for me.
Sure, you mentioned that before, but the question is really very unusual.
Do you maybe want to blush?
Why should I?
Maybe you have a bang and think that one should not talk about such things, as is often the case with the dear earthworms, because they are sexually inhibited.
You speak very enigmatically.
Is that so hard to understand? With us earthworms, there is often an already pathological inhibition regarding sexual matters, etc. Thus, it is good manners not to talk about sexual things. Many believe that the subject of sexuality is something unethical, or even a matter for the devil. But then, there are the moral apostles who see in these things something dishonorable, or even something unclean and immoral. Sex is, so to speak, often a topic that is simply taboo and about which one does not talk. That is why we refer to people as being sexually repressed when they live according to this form of thinking. Often, however, this fuss is only deception and pretense, because it is only kept and handled in such a manner in public, while in secret real orgy-like behaviors are carried out, which are to be concealed due to the inhibited fuss.
I see what you mean. That is very unfortunate. No, I did not refer the eccentricity of the question to these forms of thinking which I do not understand, but to the fact that it touches on concerns which, in themselves, do not require any clarification. Obviously, however, there is a lack of clarity among earthlings concerning these matters, if I nevertheless want to answer the question, although this would not have to be necessary. It is...
Wait a minute. Simya say, you have to bear in mind that human beings are very misguided about these things. This is especially due to sectarians who work especially on UFOs and stamp the extraterrestrials as sent by God and angels, thereby glorifying them. In their boundless fantasy, they then ascribe to them a spiritual almost perfection or total perfection, through which they are to bypass the normal path of procreation and procreate the offspring in a spiritual way. This idiocy rests on the one hand in the religious assertion that Emmanuel was conceived in a spiritual way by the dear God. On the other hand, it rests in the fact that the normal and natural act of procreation is an unclean and even animal concern, for which the explanation is again to be found in the assertion of the spiritual procreation of Emmanuel.
That cannot be the truth.
But now do not go crazy. Do you assume that I am lying to you?
I do not dare think that because I know your honesty. I want to say with my words that these religious statements in any form are incomprehensible and must not be true because they already border on stupidity. But all this was unknown to me so far in this form. I was only partially aware of it. But now I find your question justified and no longer unusual. I understand much more now. If I want to answer the question in detail, we procreate our descendants in the same natural way as is that of terrestrial humans and all other material forms of life in all universes. That says, man and woman, male and female, mate to commit a sexual intercourse. This form of procreation is a completely natural process in all material universes, which is also normally carried out everywhere in this manner. A man sleeps with a woman, mates with her and fertilizes her, so a procreation takes place. In a normal form, this is done by bringing the bodies together, which means that man and woman snuggle up to each other, unite in love, and the man inserts his procreative organ into the woman's entrance opening, which takes in the semen that begets, is fertilized, and thereby develops new life. Any other natural form of procreation does not exist, apart from exceptions where, in certain circumstances, a different, unnatural form of procreation takes place, but this is a very rare occurrence. This also applies to artificial insemination, which is usually only used in extreme cases to preserve the species. On the whole, however, the procreation of the offspring is oriented towards the normal sexual intercourse, for only this form corresponds to naturalness and the creational laws and recommendations. And only the observance of this form within a precisely defined framework guarantees the continuity and the spiritual as well as consciousness-based and physical evolution of a life form, because forced or artificial procreations hold dangers in themselves, because the offspring thus conceived can with absolute certainty decay into hardly recognizable mutations, which in the course of time gradually turn entire forms of life into physical and consciousness-based abortions and miscarriages.
This means that whole races can become mutants.
Sure, they also lose their resilience and normal form of thinking.
Forced and artificial inseminations should therefore be avoided?
Certainly, because over time they inevitably lead to degeneration, in consciousness-based as well as in body and immune system-based manners.
That is interesting. But then how can a woman have offspring if her spouse is not fertile?
Our people and also many other races in the universe have two possibilities in such cases. The first possibility is to fertilize the man concerned. But this possibility also exists with a woman. However, where a man cannot be made fertile, there is the possibility of mating with another fertile man.
Does that mean that the woman then sleeps with another man? That would give us Earthlings a big stink, because here somewhat different views prevail. What kind of man is that? And what about dear jealousy and adultery? Don't the husbands and wives go crazy?
You think correctly, the woman will be mated to by a strange man. But he himself must be attached to a woman that is married, as it is called with you. This is a law of order. According to the laws of order, this form of mating does not constitute adultery because it is an act in the sense of creation. Jealousy cannot therefore already appear because these people are aware of the laws of creation and therefore also obey them. It is also important that all partners reach a decision on such a mating in complete and mutual agreement.
I find that a quite ingenious solution. But can any man be consulted for such an act of procreation?
No, it is not like that. The man to be chosen for this act must have already conceived the limit of his own offspring. Furthermore, his overall evolution has to correspond to a certain high level.
This means, therefore, that not everyone should simply be responsible for this task. Many men would want such a job with us, because sexual satisfaction and degeneration is unfortunately still very important for us.
I am aware of that. With our race and also with many others, however, these forms of thinking have long been forgotten. Today, this is a very honorable and good task.
Which probably offers very pleasant aspects, if I imagine it like that.
Sure, that is also actually the case.
Aha, now I have caught you.
I do not understand you.
Once again, you answered a question unintentionally.
Did you let me slip up again?
Sure, because you just told me that you find sexual activity pleasant.
Did I really?
Are you ashamed of that?
I did not want to talk about that.
But now you have done it anyway. And if you have already started, you can explain the rest.
The only reason I did not want to talk about it was because I did not think it was important. I am not ashamed to talk about it.
But this is important for earthworms, because many believe that extraterrestrials are different in every respect. So it would be good if you would report a bit.
If that is so good, these factors are probably described in brief outlines because they are the same for all human life forms bound to a body. When man and woman sleep together, their thoughts move in quite imaginative paths, which trigger emotions in various forms, whereby physical and mental stimulus zones are set in motion and fill the body as well as the thoughts and feelings with pleasure. These stimuli are very pleasant to call and fulfill the life form with all sorts of desires and disinhibitions which every life form needs and thus loosens up in its outermost form. This is the case with any kind of human life form, including ours.
You said that beautifully. It is truly the best explanation I have ever heard. But is it a cheek of mine if I ask you where you get this wisdom from? The whole thing sounds to me like you are speaking from personal experience.
Sure, you think and hear very perceptively. You may ask. I do not want to make a secret of it. I have gathered my experience and acquired the necessary knowledge. So you have recognized the truth.
Well, I am glad for you. Can you or will you give me more information about it? I mean, how you came to the man and why you are not married yet?
This is very easy to explain. It has been a little over 2 centuries since I was married. The marriage with my husband, however, was still childless, because we only wanted to have offspring when he would have returned from a multi-year expedition to a newly discovered galaxy. So he went on an expedition with 7 crew members and 2 small ships. Only one, however, returned after 11 years. But the ship with my husband suffered inexplicable damage and fell into a sun. So I lost my husband, to whom I had only been married for 7 years.
You never said anything about that. So I always thought you were just single. In this impression, you have also strengthened me on several occasions.
I did not think it was important to talk about. On the other hand, it is the case with us that a man or woman is still considered single, as you say, when the spouse leaves life and no offspring has yet been conceived.
Oh, well then, according to your earlier information, I got a slightly false impression. But if we are already there, then I would be very interested in how a birth is actually going on with you.
After conception, the woman carries the child, which has only just to develop, for 9 months in her body. Then the birth takes place in the same manner as this is also known to the Earth humans.
This means that there are no differences in this case. The women have pain and contractions during childbirth, etc. like us?
Sure, there is no difference, at least if you ignore the fact that Earth humans often contain their pain at birth because they are already very effeminate.
Then the women will let the pain of childbirth endure all over them?
Of course, this is the natural birth, which also influences the mother giving birth and the offspring, and accordingly influences the manner of thinking in a positive and progressive wise.
Does that mean a woman should give birth without painkillers?
Sure, because only this form is natural and brings great benefits for mother and child. But it would go way too far if I had to name these advantages.
I get it. There are consciousness-based and physical benefits anyway, if I understand correctly.
You are very sensitive, and therefore understand everything very well.
Thank you for the fruit. But tell me, how many years have you matured physically and consciously?
If you think of the fertility, then the answer is 12 years, because with this age, every human form is capable of producing offspring. Up to the age of 70, however, marital abstinence is usually practiced in order to make very strong efforts in intellectual and consciousness-based, as well as in activity and training-based matters, in order to be able to educate oneself. This is also the minimum age usually that marriage is considered. The pure body maturity is completed at 18 years.
Does that mean that the body maturity has been reached?
Certainly, consciousness-based maturity is also attained at 18 years of age. While the period of education-based activities, etc., is completed at around 70 years of age, which does not mean, however, that learning and evolution are stopped as a result. It is not the case with us, as it is unfortunately the case on the Earth, that a person rarely acquires further knowledge after his or her regular schooling time, because with us, the further training in material and consciousness-based form continues during the entire further lifespan.
Well, how is love now with you? I mean, especially between man and woman.
True love is a creation energy sensation. But emotions that arise purely from the world of thought exist in many forms. But a true love between man and woman is a very special creation energy sensation through which man and woman come together. In contrast to the mostly only emotional love, as it still prevails among terrestrial humans, our love is of a fine spiritual-based nature and very pure, profound, and therefore lifelong lasting.
So there is only true, fine, spiritual-based love between man and woman with you when you marry. You have, however, spoken of various manner of the feelings as if they were not good, precisely with regard to purely emotional love.
You did not misunderstand me. But I also spoke previously about other feelings, which every form of life must keep under strictest control. However, you have proved to me that this should not always be the case, especially when it comes to judgments, etc., but between man and woman, and in general between the human beings of our race, there is always only open and honest, fine spiritual-based love, which is only restricted in a controlling manner in certain cases when the situation requires it.
I see, that is very clear. So you are really highly developed human beings and not robots. And also in regard to true love, you are ahead of humankind on the earth by enormous developmental periods. But how do you educate your children?
This is the task of the parents. On the other hand, however, there is control by the High Council, according to whose rules, training, and order, etc., also find their correctness through the creation energy teaching. In this form, marriages are also entered into, which is why we do not know divorces, as is unfortunately so often the case with you on the earth.
Do you not have marital quarrels then? I mean disputes and disagreements?
Do you think of us as super life forms?
Certainly not. I ask only because this would be interesting for the earthworms of my level, and also otherwise to know.
When two life forms live together in an alliance, differences of opinion inevitably arise.
Emmanuel drawn by Simyase on Wednesday, 31st December 1975.
However, these do not have to ausarten into quarrels, as is so often the case with the Earth human beings. So without exception, there are also differences of opinion in our marriages, and it would be very abnormal if it were not so. There would be a nasty malfunction in any factor. Also with us, like everywhere else, all life forms are varied in their evolution, so never two exactly alike poles are found together. If it were different, it would mean a flattening and abolition of evolution. Thus, two differently directed poles must always come together if evolution is to come about. This means, however, that these two different poles constantly rub against each other, so that two different opinions collide, and therefore differences of opinion must arise for the purpose of evolution. This is an irrevocable law of the evolution, to which we and all other life forms in all universes are assigned.
Well, I have had enough of this theme for today, thus I have another question. But can you give me more information about these things at a later date?
Sure, if this is so important for you.
Of course, otherwise I would not ask. But now something really different. You know that we earthworms peddle pictures that are supposed to represent the dear Emmanuel alias Jesus Christ. Can you perhaps draw me a picture of Emmanuel?
I do not understand. You know exactly how Emmanuel looked.
Of course I do. That is why I know that all the pictures made so far are purely idiotic, because they do not have the slightest resemblance to his real physiognomy. The artists of the 2 millennia have created a fabulous fantasy picture of him that is devoid of any reality. They probably assumed that their drawings of his face would embody a certain spirituality, just as the misguided Earth human beings imagine a spiritualized man. And to nail the final blow, they then paint a halo around the pictures.
Do the Earth humans not know that the halo is only a fantasy product of some fantasists?
They believe so firmly in its authenticity, like that the dear God is eternity itself, and Satan is indeed a devil who roasts humans.
That is bad and incomprehensible. But you know the real face of Emmanuel, why don't you draw it yourself? You are quite good with drawing pencils.
I paint and draw something here and there, that is true, but with the best will in the world I cannot draw faces. I have tried many times before, but all that remained were miserable attempts. When I draw a human head and then hold it in front of someone's nose, they think it is the head of a gorilla.
Is that really the case?
I would not say it otherwise.
Then I will help you. Bring me paper and pens the next time I make contact.
I have already got it here. There. A pencil and... Wait, there is also enough paper and an eraser. Can you draw the picture right now?
You are in quite a hurry. All right, come with me. I will make the drawing for you in the ship.
All right, thanks. You will quickly get used to my language.
Why?
In former times you always said beamship, but now you restrict yourself only to the designation ship.
It is easier for me that way. The German language is very extensive and very meaningful.
You also know everything.
Remember, I am still learning. Now come on, I have to hurry. I have a lot of other things to do.
I see what you mean. Of course, you have to get back to work. I would like to ask you something about that.
Sure, just please not today because my time is running out.
We reach the ship, where Sim Yase makes me a picture of Emmanuel, for which he only needs a little more than 11 minutes.
Fantastic, Simyase. That is the Emmanuel almost as he lives and breathes.
Lived, and you are forgetting time.
Oh well, of course, even though it was only 20 years ago, 2,000 years have passed since then.
Sure, but now I am really pressed for time. Farewell and be gentle in all things.
I will, Simyase, and thank you very much. Take care, and be well behaved.
I am having fun with you, but now go, dear friend. My thoughts will be with you.